Well, if you are watching this video, it means you're probably a Path of Exile 2 enjoyer, and maybe you've already seen the news. I'm going to give you a little bit of like a vibe check, effectively, what is going on. But really, it's going to break down to this point right here, which is, you know how, there's two things I want to talk about. You know how in the previous interviews they had stated like they reworked kind of everything, they looked at everything, all skills have been touched, etc. That is very much true. There is a lot of changes in this patch. If you look at this here, this is only the table of contents, and that in and of itself is quite a bit. And as you go through these, you're very quickly going to realize that this is, you know, easily the largest patch this game has seen, and one of the larger patches I've seen just straight up in ARPG history. I mean, there is a significant amount of changes, skills, items, ascendancies, you know, basically everything about the game has been looked at or in one way or another. So right off the bat, I want to tell you this. If you were sick of playing the same build, like if you were sick of watching and playing builds like Spark, Gimling, Stat Stacker, you know, these types of things that were just like kind of overly populated, that's absolutely not going to be the case. If you were sick of looking and every single build was using Ingenuity, Hoa, etc., that is no longer the case as well. Effectively, the meta is going to be completely shifted. And anyone that reads these patch notes one pass through, it tells you exactly what, you know, here's the new meta. Like these 5 builds are going to be the best. It's all guesswork right now. No one actually really knows. Part of that is because in these patch notes here, these significant patch notes, they actually do not have 3 important things. First important thing, the 100 new support gems are not listed. So there's 100 new support gems that are going to affect builds that we do not see here. The 100 new unique items are not listed as well. That I'm surely some of those, you know, including they said there's going to be higher end uniques, etc., are not listed except for just the few we've seen the review in teasers. And surely that is going to change some builds. The other important part as well is this line right here. Many skills have had their base damage and or growth per level rebalanced. Most of these changes are not specifically mentioned below as the changes are too widespread. So the 3 big determining factors that we still need to know are what are the support gems, what are the new items, and what are the actual numbers behind the changes of these skills. And they say most of these changes are not specifically mentioned because some of them actually are. And as you peek through this, you're very quickly going to realize there are some buffs sprinkled around, but a lot of these are actually nerfs for a lot of builds. I'm talking Detonate Dead, Minions got nerfed, Hex Blast got nerfed. As you scroll through these and start to look, there's a lot of nerfs. Now, there are some pretty cool things that were added as well. If you look at this here, like Blink is now a travel skill, for instance. So you no longer, at least from how I'm reading it, maybe no longer need to actually reserve Spirit for this. This could just actually be a skill, or it could just be adding the travel tag on a Spirit. I'm not sure which way this actually goes, but if that is just a travel skill and it's no longer a Spirit skill, like a Spirit gem, then that's actually a big buff to traveling. But that, much like many of these changes here, are going to have to wait for the actual launch to come out to figure out. And things like the Herald skill here can no longer trigger from kills caused by Herald skill. So there's like, it's proccing itself and you're doing the Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder with like the different infusions swap, like they've nerfed that. Ingenuity, the most common build in the game, it's like 94% of builds or something was using Ingenuity, went from 40 to 80% for both rings to 20 to 30% for each ring rolled independently, so it's even harder to get those bonuses. And then they have now bonus charm slots, charm charges gained, reduced charms used, etc. The Hand of Wisdom and Action gloves here, like another glove that was very, very commonly used. Its lightning damage here effectively got cut in half, and the attack speed here now provides 1% increased attack speed per 20 dex as opposed to 3% per 25. So these are massive changes here. One actual interesting point about Ingenuity, and this is sort of on the the base game where you will already have this item, so it's not going to affect the new ones, obviously, but existing versions of this item are unaffected by these changes. So if you actually have one of these belts, this belt just skyrocketed in value on the base version of the game because it is objectively superior. But, you know, I'm not going to go through all of these changes. I'm just pointing out a few of these to give you kind of a feeler on how the meta is going to change here. Other items, like, look at this. The Ghost Rive unique body armor now provides 25% of maximum life converted to energy shield. Previously was 50%. Everlasting Gaze getting absolutely gutted. It now is 4 to 6% of maximum mana as extra energy shield. Previously 20 to 30%. Astra Mentis getting the cut as well to 50 to 100 from 80 to 100. Asteri's Design being dropped to 10%, previously 20 to 25, though this one makes sense due to like the addition of Eternal Life, for instance, and plus this was just very good. And the way the calculations work with some of these items, like setting a stat to a specific value, such as Chaos Inoculation by setting your life to 1, or Blood Magic setting your mana to 0, now occurs before conversion is applied to the item. So you know the whole thing was like you could do Chaos Inoculation, Whisk Go Thrive, still get your bonus energy shield as if you had the life. Like this has been changed as well. So this is fundamentally going to change how these builds work. Now, this actually shouldn't be a surprise because honestly, it didn't make sense the way it worked. You were getting like the best of both worlds, and the items that I've just mentioned were actually completely ridiculous. So honestly, I'm not really too surprised that the ceiling of builds is getting lower. I mean, they mentioned as much even in the interviews that, you know, they're cutting like the boss life from tier 0 in half because they want more people to be able to access these bosses, and they're giving you more chances to be able to fight the bosses, etc. But that also makes sense when you realize like a lot of the damage is here getting lowered. It kind of answers some of the questions that I've been having sort of myself and I've mentioned before, which is like, I wonder where the pacing of the game they want it to be. I wonder where they want the power level of players to be. And they basically did what they said they were going to do, which is bring the roof down and bring the floor up a little bit, because they did actually hand out some buffs to some things. Like, for instance, Warrior, for example. The Titan Ascendancy, I thought maybe we were going to see like Hulking Form get nerfed or something, because it's quite good outside of the fact that Warrior has its own issues. But if you look here, 50% more damage against heavy stun enemies instead of 40% on surprising strength. The Earthbreaker notable is now 25% instead of 20%. Fully Broken Armor causes enemies to take 20% increased physical damage. Ancestrally Boosted is now 30% more damage and 20% more area effect instead of 20 and 20 for both. Rolling Slam is now 1 second instead of 1.5 second bonus to attack time. You know, those sort of fixed attack times. They're actually basically making it easier, or faster, I should say, to actually do these attacks. Same thing with Sunder. There are some changes, like Seismic Cry no longer gets the increased war speed, for instance. So this will affect some builds, like maybe the Crier build. I think it's still viable, but yeah. And some of the other builds caught a little bit of a change here, like Stampede Quality is now 0 to 20% chance to cause an Aftershock instead of 0 to 30%. So it's like you get buffs for some things and you do actually get nerfs for others. Volcanic Fissure now has a limit of 8 concurrent fissures on the ground. That's probably due to me figuring out you can actually crash the game with this. And the Brutality Gem goes to 25% physical instead of 35%. So you get some buffs, you get some nerfs. I'm assuming the other support gems will compensate for this. But honestly, just looking at it, it feels like more or less impossible to tell where everything is going to be. Maybe it's just I need more knowledge and more time in Path of Exile alone, but there's so many changes here and we're lacking so much crucial information still that it feels pretty hard to be able to tell. Overall, when I look at this, I think Warriors got out better than most of the other classes. As it seems, we either got some buffs or, you know, some compensation for some things. And a lot of the other abilities, you know, got massive. Like Minions actually got like some pretty major nerfs. I'm assuming maybe that's because of Spectres or just they're bringing down the roof alone, because, you know, Minions were pretty strong. But like that got nerfed heavily. Detonate Dead got nerfed heavily. Like you can look across the board and there's quite a bit of changes to quite a bit of abilities. One that's super interesting that affects everyone, however, if you look at this here, is 12 jewel sockets have been removed from the passive tree. Existing characters with jewels in these removed sockets can reclaim their jewels to the main inventory using /reclaim jewels check command. This is actually half of all the jewel sockets on the tree. I believe there's 24 jewel sockets, so half of them have been removed from the passive tree. I'm not sure where these sockets are. Maybe they're on the outside of the tree. Maybe they're on the inside of the tree, but that means it's going to be a little bit harder for things like time loss jewels to get a lot of value. I mean, jewels are pretty good in the game, so maybe they thought they were too good. This also means, you know, it nerfs the adorned as well. But we also got like a whole bunch of new passive skill clusters: blind, volatility, ranged, and melee related, hazards, companion, presence, radius, and aura, parry, banner, bleeding, thorns, quiver. So it's like, okay, you know, maybe we see a bunch of nerfs, but we actually don't know what these are yet, so it's really hard to tell. There is one change that I'm like pretty surprised about though, which is life. Like life actually basically got nerfed unless somehow they're adding life on the tree somewhere, because life now no longer rolls on the Invictus unique body armor. So 5% increased maximum life from Socketed Rune or Soul Cores, just it no longer appears on that piece of armor. They said instead there is 7 new random Socketed Rune or Soul Core modifiers. But they also removed max mana, rarity, all attributes. So there is, a lot of changes there. But seeing life gone is kind of interesting. Also, the Machination Shield, the one that would go 333 to 666%, is now 100% increased effective Socketed Cores, and now grants Everlasting Sacrifice, which gives you, I believe it's plus 5% all res maximum. So this is like a massive nerf, basically, to this item. I mean, you can say the all-res. I don't know how much I care about the all-res. Its specific point was for the Soul Cores, and this was one way you could get, like, lots of mana or lots of life also. So normally I was planning to use that shield because you can acquire from Chaos plus Invictus, and that's where you get, like, a good chunk of life. I was watching Karn's stream right when these patch notes came out because it dropped, of course, right after I logged off for the evening, and he was saying he thinks it's, like, 1,000 life, basically, gone from your build. You're losing about 1,000 life on your warrior. Now, again, not really sure because this could be compensated elsewhere with things we haven't seen yet. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, if life got a small nerf, then what happened to Energy Shield then? I mean, obviously Energy Shield was like kind of wild. So where does that leave ES? Well, the most notable point of this, what you're probably thinking would be the Grim Feast gem. You know, the one that doubles your Energy Shield and just gives it back to you constantly and removes all of the penalty of having to have Energy Shield recharge. Well, congratulations, because Grim Feast is literally no longer even in the game. It is gone, deleted. They say they're going to plan to rework this in the future, but for now, it's just gone. I'm perfectly okay with this. Honestly, building Energy Shield and with Grim Feast felt ridiculous to me. For 30 Spirit, I'm getting double my, my life or my Energy Shield, and it's constantly recharging itself. And I felt like if I wasn't building Energy Shield, I'm basically an idiot because you just put on Ghost Rider or something, even if you're stacking like life and you still get Energy Shield. Like Energy Shield just felt incredibly too good. Outside of the unique items like Asteri's Disdain, we talked about Everlasting Gaze, Ghost Rive, there wasn't too many other additions, or I should say subtractions, to Energy Shield. There's one here, which is the Heavy Buffer Notable Passive skill, now grants 5% of damage taken bypasses Energy Shield instead of 10% reduced maximum life. So if you're running Chaos Inoculation, you basically are no longer taking this one. So that's a little bit of a, small buff there to CI energy stacking. Or I should say nerf, because this will, get you one shot. Now, I haven't had the chance to go through every single one of these yet. I've just picked it through here this morning, a little bit last night after the stream, and watched a bit of the Karn stream because he's the warrior guy, and I was super curious what he thought of the warrior, for instance. And as I look at this, I realize that I'm going to look at it again, and I'm going to go live basically right now as posting this video and read through all of this again. But until I actually get a chance to see what the support gems are, what the unique items are, etc., I have no idea how I'm going to do my build. I think I'm just going to raw dog this one and pick Smith of Katav. I'm going to get baited into warrior again, and I'm going to pick up a spear. Arguably maces, because maces seem like, maybe it's a little bit better here. And just hope to God that actually works, basically. There is one thing that I think is super nice about this, which is if you, one, did not like where the game was going. Like, I've seen a lot of people say they don't like how zoomy it was, okay? It's looking like that this right here is kind of addressing that point. I'm seeing the power level overall seem like it's shrinking down. I'm not saying there's not going to be broken builds. Obviously, when we see these support gems, we'll be able to tell more, and I'm sure people are going to figure out broken builds. But it looks like their design is not like Spark, Gimling, Stat Stacker level of disgusting. Like, they obviously seem like they do not want that in the game. The other part that you might enjoy as well is because there's so many changes, and it will be... I saw people say when we were watching the reveal and kind of going through the sentences, like, oh, people mathing down solving the game before the launch. Like, there's no way. Like, we have the launch here literally tomorrow. People aren't going to have this solved at once. So if you actually quite like going into these patches or leagues or launches of games, and everyone's kind of like figuring out as you go and the excitement of a new, like, fresh start and all that, this is definitely one of these moments. This is no small change of the game. It's a fairly large change of the game. And because of that, if you enjoy having a fresher footing into the game, this might be a moment to check it out. With that being said, though, there's a lot of changes. I'm going to go live now and start looking through the rest of these because just as I look at it, you know, there's a lot of other things we haven't even talked about here, like bleeding. There's a lot of changes to bleed as we saw in the review, but also things like this. Bleeding concoction now is 200% more magnitude of bleed. That's literally double. It was previously 100%. So there's a lot of things when you look at it, it's like, wait a minute, maybe I'll play that. If you've had the chance to look at the patch notes or you've seen this few of these summary videos, etc., by everybody, how are you feeling about this one? I'm actually curious about the vibe check. I look at this and it's like, I don't know how to feel because I look at this and there's just so many changes. I looks like a general overall nerf to, you know, most things, but I know as soon as I say that, there's going to be a million comments like, well, this one got a huge buff and this one got a huge buff and this one got a huge buff and you missed this. And it's like, you're probably right. I probably did. So I'm kind of curious what you guys think about it. But as it stands, there's one thing for sure we know, which is like Dawn of the Hunt is going to feel like a completely different game than the launch of Path of Exile 2. Kitty's freaking out at me and wants some lunch, so I'll see you on the live stream.